Hey guys. You are watching your Monster Izuku fanfiction. How are you all? So in this video, we will see, what if Quirkless Deku was unstoppable with Bakugo's support? Here is short summary. Explore a world where Deku's relentless training from childhood makes him an unstoppable force, even without a quirk. Witness how Bakugo's support transforms as he encourages a quirkless Deku, fostering a powerful friendship and altering their destinies. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. In a world where Izuku Midoriya discovers he is quirkless, his dreams of becoming a hero are shattered. Despite the initial heartbreak, his childhood friend Bakugo stands by him, defying the norm and encouraging Izuku to pursue his hero dreams. Together, they face the challenges and prejudices of a society that deems quirkless individuals as powerless. With Bakugo's unwavering support, Izuku embarks on a journey to become the first quirkless hero, proving that true heroism isn't defined by having a quirk. Bakugo didn't really understand what was wrong with Izuku being quirkless. Those damn extras didn't have any right to treat Izuku like that. He and Izuku promised to become heroes together. What the world thought. Izuku was going to be a hero, quirk or not. Those shitty losers, picking on Izuku like they were superior to him. How could they want to be heroes if they were hurting innocent people? Fuming, Bakugo stormed down the stairs. Katsuki, his mom Mitsuki, or as he preferred, the old hag, called from downstairs. Stop making a racket. Walk down the stairs like a normal person. Shut up, stupid old hag. Bakugo retorted. He was not in a good mood today. He slammed open the fridge and grabbed an unopened carton of milk. He started tearing apart said carton in an attempt to open it. Shitty carton. Bakugo cursed as he attacked the carton with his teeth. His father, Masaru, raised an eyebrow at his son's violent swearing. Wonder where he got that from. The fridge, Mitsuki replied. Masaru resisted the urge to facepalm. Of course, Katsuki picked up that habit of swearing from his mother. Katsuki, we're going to be late. Fine, I'm coming. Bakugo grumbled and made his way to the front door. They soon reached the kindergarten and Bakugo went in. When he walked into the classroom, a sight reached his eyes. A boy with red wings and someone else were beating up Izuku. Why don't you stand up for yourself, you shrimp? The wing guy sneered. Oh, I forgot. You're quirkless, so you can't. Rage built up in Bakugo as he ran at the two extras. How could they treat Izuku like that for being quirkless? Leave him alone, he yelled, large explosions firing from his palms. They hit the damned bullies, who yelped in pain and ran away. He knelt down and took a good look at Izuku, who had curled up on the floor. Izuku was covered in bruises and cuts, letting out a whimper. He trembled in rage. How was he supposed to be the #1 hero if he couldn't even protect his friend? And then there were those treating Izuku like a freak or something just because he didn't have a quirk. Bakugo was going to make them pay. Kachan, you okay, nerd? Bakugo asked. Why yeah. Bakugo narrowed his eyes. That doesn't look okay. I'm taking you to the nurse's office. But, Izuku tried to protest. But Bakugo took his hand and dragged him along. No way was he letting Izuku walk this off as if nothing happened. Thankfully, most of the injuries Izuku had were light, so the nurse treated him in a second. Come on, Izuku, we're gonna be late for class. Coming. Izuku ran along with him. The lessons were boring as he already knew all the content that was being taught. Time passed in the blink of an eye. The bell rang and the teacher, Mr. Shizuo, was it. Stopped his yakking and said, well, that's all for today, kids. Finally, Bakugo leapt from his chair, grabbed his stuff, and rushed to the door immediately. 5 minutes later, he was tapping his foot impatiently. Where the did Izuku go? Thankfully, about 30 seconds later, the broccoli boy turned up. Sorry, Kachan, I had some trouble finding a pen. It took a while for me to realize I had it in my pocket. Bakugo snorted, typical of Izuku to do something like this. That's when he noticed Izuku's smile seemed a little forced. His mind flitted back to the bullies this morning. The whimpers, the tear stains on those freckled cheeks. Hey, Izuku. Yeah, did you know Izuku can be read as Deku in kanji? Huh. Bakugo stopped himself from laughing at Izuku's confused look. He flashed Izuku a cheery smile. Deku sounds like Dekiru, doesn't it? And Dekiru means, can do it. Izu no. Deku widened his eyes. I believe you can do it, Bakugo declared. Suddenly, Deku squeezed him. Thank you, Kachan, Deku said, with a smile brighter than the sun. Suddenly, Bakugo felt a little flustered, pink tinging his cheeks. Stop calling me that, it's embarrassing. The blonde muttered. Sorry. Deku deflated slightly, but quickly brightened up again. How about Katsu, short for Katsuki? Plus, Katsu means, W and you always win no matter what. Katsu it is, Bakugo agreed. He was never gonna let anyone hurt his kind, sweet and gentle friend. Ever. Bakugo rolled over in his bed. Such a perfect start to the weekend, a good amount of sleep. However, his blissful relaxation was ruined when glaring light shone in his eyes, accompanied with the sound of the curtain rolling up. Oi, Katsuki, wake up, the old hag's voice sounded. It's already 10 o'clock. Bakugo gave a groan. Couldn't he sleep in even on a Saturday? Grumbling a little, he sat up and rubbed the sleep out of his red eyes. He scrambled down his bed and grabbed the toothbrush and toothpaste. Die! A yell of rage rang through the house. Bakugo was currently venting his morning temper on brushing his teeth. Damn germs! He screamed, using so much force on the toothbrush that the bristles were threatening to fall off. Katsuki! The equally loud voice of his mother shouted back. Don't make a racket. Masaru Bakugo sighed and rubbed his forehead, messing up his spiky brown hair in the process of getting rid of his headache. Well, like mother, like son, he thought. Shouting matches were a common occurrence in the Bakugo household. Giving a long sigh, he leant back on the comfortable sofa and took a good sip of the delicious elixir of life that was coffee. Leave him alone. He didn't do anything wrong, Izuku said, trying to keep the tremble out of his voice. He let out a small whimper as he was knocked to the ground. The small, fat-winged boy from before and another boy with long, stretchy fingers shared an identical, evil smirk as they closed in on Izuku. What's the matter? Can't do anything except for cry without your explosive friend. I thought heroes were supposed to be strong. The winged boy, Akuma Hane, sneered as he sunk a fist into Izuku's stomach. Tears rolled down Izuku's face as he desperately thrashed and kicked. Why wouldn't they just leave him alone? The bullies ignored his weak attempts to fight back and dealt blow after blow. They punched and kicked at the green-haired boy, taking pleasure at the quirkless boy's pain. Honestly, I don't even know why Katsuki bothers to be friends with a quirkless freak like you, the long-fingered bully, Nagayuba, snarled. Why stick with a useless reject who can't do anything when there are great people like us? Izuku desperately tried to block out the cruel voices and ignore them. Slowly, Izuku gave up trying to fight back, and curled into a small ball, blocking out all the pain and sound as the bullies mercilessly laughed and kept on attacking. Bakugo hummed as he strolled off towards the park, where he and Deku were going to meet up. Today is gonna be awesome, he thought. He and Deku were going to have fun playing heroes. Of course, I'll be the hero, Bakugo thought, 'cause who else than the future number one? His thoughts were cut short by the sight in front of his eyes. Two shitty extras were hurting Deku, having the nerve to laugh at Deku when he curled up. You're doing, Bakugo growled, anger seeping through every menacing word as small explosions crackled in his palms. The extras ran away the moment they saw him. Cowards. Didn't even have the guts to fight him. Katsu. A small whisper sounded, and round green eyes peeked out, glistening with tears. Bakugo immediately ran to Deku's side, kneeling down and inspecting his injuries. After Izuku got patched up, he and Katsu quietly sat on the bench, licking the ice creams they had gotten. Hey, Deku, yeah, shouldn't you take self-defense lessons or whatever? I'm not always gonna be there to look out for ya, you know. Katsu mumbled through a mouthful of ice cream, before clutching his head and grunting, brain freeze. Izuku stifled a giggle and said, I can't. I'm not really good at physical stuff like you. Words flashed in his mind. I don't even know why Katsuki bothers to be friends with a quirkless freak like you. He quickly shook his head. It's not like that, he thought firmly. However, he was snapped out of his thoughts by an affectionate hand ruffling his fluffy hair fondly. Well, if you give up the moment it's a little hard, how are you ever going to be strong? Just because people are walking over you doesn't mean you should lie down and make it easier for them. Katsu grinned. A warm feeling grew in his chest. Katsu, oi, what are you crying for? Izuku squirmed a little as he hesitated, his small hand trembling in front of the door. Katsu tsked, tapping his foot impatiently. Just get it over with already. Easy for you to say. Irritation sparked slightly. You aren't the one who has to worry Oka-san by telling her you're being bullied. Izuku didn't want his mom to worry so much. It was hard enough for her, raising her son alone while his dad worked overseas. He didn't want to worsen the burden. However, hesitation was not an option because Inko Midoriya, hearing Bakugo's voice, pushed open the door of her room. What's wrong? She asked, peering at Izuku's worried and slightly guilty face. Well, you see, some of the other kids are a little mean to me because I'm quirkless, and maybe I should take self-defense. I hope this doesn't cause mom too much trouble, Izuku thought. However, Katsu butted in. What Deku means is he wants to take self-defense or kung fu or whatever shit so he can kick the bullies' asses. Inko had been extremely worried. Her darling baby Izuku had been coming home with so many bruises and scratches lately. She tried to tell the school about the bullying, but the school wrote it off as boys being boys, and said that if Izuku had gotten injured, it was his own fault for being quirkless and useless. The meeting with the principal had ended up with Inko storming out of the office. How dare they disregard her baby for something he couldn't control? When Izuku asked to take self-defense, she was relieved. At least he knew to stand up for himself. She couldn't help but smile slightly at Katsuki's cuss-filled explanation. Looks like Mitsuki had problems keeping her words swear-free. Well, she wasn't surprised. She scooped up Izuku and beamed, saying, of course. Her heart melted when Izuku gave her a bright, cheery smile and said, yay. Meanwhile, Bakugo was forced to look away from the smiling mother and son. Too bright, Bakugo thought. He was glad that Auntie Inko agreed. At least Deku will be able to stand up for himself. Should I join in on the self-defense classes too? Bakugo pondered. That would be a good idea. Make sure Deku wasn't being bullied in classes, plus learn some professional combat skills. Yep, definitely a great idea. Bakugo mentally patted himself on the back for being a genius. Izuku looked at the looming doorway of the dojo. Are you sure this is a good idea? He whispered to Katsu, who was next to him. Yes, Katsu hissed back. Oh, well, he stepped into the dojo tentatively. There were only several other kids here, which was expected considering they were several minutes early. An orange-haired girl with teal eyes bounced over. Hey, she said cheerily. Nice to meet you. I'm Itsuka Kendo. What about you? Izuku immediately got flustered, his face so red he looked like a strawberry. Oh my sugarless talking tone, what do I say? Steam began coming from his head. Thankfully, Katsu covered for him. I'm Bakugo Katsuki and broccoli over here is Midoriya Izuku. Izuku squawked in protest at broccoli. Seriously, broccoli. Still, all that he managed to stutter out was, and nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. Look forward to learning with you guys in the dojo. Kendo grinned. They chatted for a while longer, waiting for the teacher to arrive. Izuku was absolutely fascinated by Kendo's quirk, Big Fist. He started rambling, thinking about all the different ways to use the quirk while noting them down on a notebook he pulled out of nowhere at Mach 20 speed. Suddenly, the heavy thump of footsteps sounded from the hall. The entire dojo went dead silent as the children held their breath, simultaneously looking at the doorway where their teacher was going to appear. Thump, thump. The thumping grew louder and louder until a rough silhouette could be seen. Soon, their teacher reached the doorway. His loud, booming voice rang through the dojo. Welcome, all apprentices of the Hard Fist Dojo. Izuku looked in wonder at his new sensei. The man had black hair and eyes and his face was square. He was sturdily built, and a feature that stood out was a long, thin scar that stretched from his cheekbone to his chin. Despite being fairly plain looking, the fiery determination burning bright in his eyes inspired awe in others. I am going to be your teacher for the rest of the time you spend in this dojo. You may call me Takahashi-sensei. I look forward to teaching you all some good martial arts. Takahashi-sensei grinned. He's so cool. Izuku was starry-eyed. All right, everyone, let's start with some introductions to break the ice, shall we? Everybody can introduce their names and interests. Okay, everyone said. I'm Yuki Fuyuro, a boy with white hair and blue eyes went first. My hobby's ice skating. A girl with brown hair and orange eyes raised her hand. I'm Kazan Yogan. I love making models. A lime-haired boy with brown eyes piped up. Shizen Kusa, gardening. Kids introduced their names and hobbies one by one, some of them including their quirks. I'm Bakugo Katsuki, and I don't have any interests or whatever. My quirk's explosion, and I'm gonna surpass All Might and become the #1 ing hero. Katsu boasted. Typical of him, Izuku thought. That's a nice goal to aim for, Bakugo-kun. But remember, everything starts with small steps, so let's break this down into smaller goals and focus on learning martial arts for now. Takahashi-sensei advised. He's really nice. Izuku raised his hand and said shyly, I'm Izuku Midoriya, and I like to analyze quirks. Alright, now everyone's got an idea of who's who, let's get started. Takahashi-sensei showed them a simple stance for defense and told them to practice it while he walked around correcting their stances. He walked over to Izuku, took a good look, and told him, your stance is not bad, just keep your legs a little more apart. Izuku tries moving his legs slightly more apart. Like this. Yep, Takashi-sensei replied. For the next hour, they spent their time practicing the stance and an offensive stance Takahashi-sensei showed them. It was exhausting work, and by the time the hour was over, their arms were on the verge of falling off. There was a collective groan when the man cheerfully announced there was only another hour left. After teaching them how to throw a punch, Takahashi-sensei mercifully gave them a break. Bakugo sighed as he sat down next to Deku and Hand Girl, all three of them soaked with sweat. He emptied his limited edition All Might water bottle in one huge gulp. I feel like shit, he groaned, rubbing his aching muscles. Even though he didn't want to admit it, the exercises were hard as. Well, if I just sit around, I can't expect to just suddenly surpass All Might, can I? Strength came from hard work. All right, kiddos, break's over. We're gonna have a fun time learning even more martial arts. Somebody at the far side of the dojo screamed, no. The children gathered around Takahashi in a circle, all looking disheveled and weary. Takahashi-sensei was seemingly unaware of the poor kid's pain and said, it's sparring time. I can't believe I have to go up against Katsu, Izuku thought. He shifted into a defensive stance, getting ready to block his best friend's attacks. Said explosive blonde was standing opposite to him, a confident grin on his face as he took an offensive stance. Takahashi-sensei's voice sounded next to them. You guys can start sparring once I tell you. I'll walk around taking a good look at your sparring and give you advice later on. Get in your stances. NNND. Start. Now. Immediately, Izuku braced himself as Katsu pounced towards him. This is gonna be hard. A bit later. God, that was exhausting. I can't believe we're going there every Saturday, Katsu groaned. Well, I can't blame him. Both of the boys were drenched in sweat and exhaustedly trudging home. They were absolutely drained of energy and had bruises covering their body. Still, the bruises were more of their own fault. They had been a bit too enthusiastic in the sparring matches, or how Izuku had explained to a very panicked and teary Inko. Still, I'm happy we made friends with Kendo-san. Not. I'm not friends with the Hand Girl, Bakugo grunted. Katsu's such a tsundere, Izuku thought amusedly. Still, this lesson was really helpful. TCH, whatever. Even though he didn't like to admit it, Bakugo was impressed by both Hand Girl and Deku. While Deku went off for a toilet break, Bakugo had decided to take a look at all the shitty extras nearby. He'd spotted Hand Girl casually flipping her opponent around. Hand Girl was pretty damn good, and so was Deku. He was all wimpy, too scared to go offensive, but the damn nerd managed to last quite a bit against Bakugo. Still, obviously, he was the best compared to everyone else, with his perfect quirk and amazing skills. "Wanna go for some ice cream?" Bakugo was snapped out of his thoughts by Auntie Inko's gentle voice. "You guys worked really hard today." "Yeah," Deku squealed with excitement. "Too bright." Bakugo shrugged. "Sure, why not? Okay then, we're gonna get ice cream. Let's go." Bakugo couldn't help but let a small smile creep up his face. "Wait for me," he yelled, running towards them. Time flew. In no time at all, Bakugo and Izuku had grown to the age of 14. Izuku was left alone by his bullies mostly, only earning the occasional glare, courtesy of a certain angry Pomeranian being very overprotective. In the very rare occasion somebody actually attacked him, he'd easily beat said person. All the hard work he'd put in at Takahashi's lessons had paid off. He was now one of the top students at the dojo along with Kendo. Bakugo, of course, had also largely improved, but more in quirk usage than combat skills. One of the perhaps more remarkable changes in Bakugo was the fact that his huge ego, inflated by all the people who praised him for his quirk, had deflated to a slightly better size. Through his friends' efforts, he was less of an arrogant asshole who saw everyone else as lower than him. Keyword being slightly. He's still got an explosive temper and superiority complex. Still, Kendo and Izuku were quite glad for the small change in their friend, who was admittedly very hard to stand before. He still is, just not as much. They had also made a new friend, a boy named Mashirao Ojiro who joined the dojo 2 years after them. He had blonde hair, black eyes and was quite friendly. His quirk gave him a tail that was completely hairless except the end, where there was a small tuft. Through a bit of training and helpful suggestions from Izuku, he'd grown to be quite adept at using his tail as a third arm and it could now nimbly grab objects and even support his body weight. They'd become good friends quite quickly. It was another normal day of middle school. Izuku and Bakugo sat in a classroom, the latter resting his feet on the table. The teacher caught their attention by starting to talk. "Since this is your last year, you should start thinking seriously about your future. I'll now pass out printouts about your future plans. But you guys are all planning to become heroes, right?" The teacher threw the papers into the air and the class cheered, all of them activating their quirks and cheering. All of them except for two. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks, but using your powers at school is against the rules. "Sensei, don't lump me in with these guys," Bakugo spoke up, his gaze cocky and conceited. "There's no way I'm gonna be stuck at the bottom with the rest of these losers." Izuku sighed, Katsu's being all full of himself again. Although Bakugo wasn't as bad as he used to be, he never really managed to get rid of his arrogance. One of their classmates, obviously offended, called Bakugo out. That was uncalled for, Katsuki. Yeah, Izuku threw his pen at the ash blonde's back, who turned around and glared at him. "Katsu, stop being so mean. Also, we really have to work on that superiority complex of yours." "It isn't a superiority complex if I am superior to them," Bakugo protested, yeeting the pen back to Izuku, who had the sudden urge to give another one of his 2-hour-long lectures on how Bakugo was not superior and that he needed to learn how to treat others as actual human beings. However, the teacher interrupted their interaction. "Oh, if I remember correctly, Bakugo, you want to go to UA High, right?" The class broke out into a wild mess of shocked voices. UA, that national-level school, its standardized rank score is 79. Their acceptance rate is really low too. That's exactly why you guys are nobodies. Bakugo jumped out of his seat, neatly landing on top of his desk. "I aced the mock test. Deku and I are the only ones in this shitty school who could possibly get into UA. I'll definitely surpass All Might and become the top hero. My name will be inscribed on the list of top earners." "Oh, yeah, didn't Midoriya want to go to UA too?" The class went dead silent, some of the students exchanging incredulous looks. A student with a sneer on his face sniggered, breaking the silence. "Midoriya, you're kidding. He's quirkless. You can't get into the hero course by just studying. He jeered. He looked around, as if expecting everyone to back him up. Right, guys. But no one answered him. They knew exactly what happened to people who mocked Midoriya for his quirklessness, and it wasn't a fate they'd like to meet. Instead, their eyes focused on the menace that loomed behind him. Bakugo blasted the guy's table with an explosion, vicious anger visible on his face. "Who do you think you are, trying to downgrade Deku like that? He's better than you 1,000 times. If you think you're hot stuff at being a hero, go ahead and try to get in one of those hero schools yourself. You'd probably fail and go home crying for your mommy." He recoiled with fear, shrinking away from Bakugo's explosions. I swear, I didn't mean it like that. I'm sorry," he pleaded as Bakugo held him by the collar of his Gakurin with his right hand, explosions popping in his right. Bakugo stopped when Izuku put a hand on his shoulder. "It's all right, Katsu," Izuku said softly, slowly pulling the blonde's hand away from the poor boy's collar. The bully dropped back into his chair, eyes wide with relief. Bakugo grunted, but let go of the matter and plopped back onto his seat. The bell rang, and Izuku slung his bag over his shoulders. He walked down the corridor casually, smiling a little when a second year ran up to him. "Midoriya-senpai. Hey, Tanaka, I heard about what happened today. That asshole had no right to talk about you like that. You're not just brains, you've got brawn too. I mean, look at your six-pack. You probably could have kicked that guy's ass even if Bakugo-senpai wasn't there." Izuku felt his lips twitch upwards at the comment. It was true that his hard work had paid off and that he now had not just a six-pack, but also a third-degree black belt in karate and judo. He definitely could have taken care of the bully without Katsu's help, but he let the blonde do his thing, and only interfered when he went too far. "Thanks, Tanaka," he replied, ruffling the boy's brown hair affectionately. Tanaka was a boy who idolized Izuku because of how he was strong despite his quirklessness. Tanaka was often ridiculed for his weak quirk, that allowed him to emit a soft glow from his fingers. It was pretty much useless except for when you needed to go to the bathroom in the middle of night, which was admittedly quite a common situation, but you could just use a flashlight instead of his pointless quirk, as one of his rather unkind classmates had pointed out. Seeing someone quirkless be so strong gave him hope that someone, useless, could actually amount to something. Tanaka began following Midoriya everywhere, asking him how to become stronger. Midoriya had patiently listened to his eager ramblings and gave him tips on physical training, popping over to help correct him every few days. To Tanaka, Midoriya had been the person who let him believe in himself again. "Do you wanna pop over and check how I've been doing on that stance you taught me?" he asked eagerly, only to droop down in disappointment when the green-haired boy shook his head. "I'm sorry, Tanaka, but I promised to meet up with Katsu at the arcade today. Maybe tomorrow," Izuku responded gently, seeming apologetic. "Okay, great, I'll see you tomorrow." Izuku continued on his way, his voice slowly fading away as he went down the stairs. The broccoli boy hummed as he jogged towards the arcade, waving hello to the koi swimming lazily in a pond. He was making his way through an underpass when a gurgling noise came from the sewers. He froze when green sludge started seeping out, forming into a giant pile of green sludge with red eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. The sludge monster towered over him, letting out a cackle. A medium-sized invisibility cloak, evil glee seeped through its every word. The sludge villain pounced, using its body to swallow Izuku. Izuku gagged when the stench of the sludge hit his nose, and he instinctively held his breath. It was a good thing he took in that air when did, for the villain started to cover his mouth with sludge in an attempt to choke him to death. Izuku kicked and tore at the sludge with all his strength, but he couldn't so much as impact the thing that was completely made of fluid. "Calm down, Izuku," he told himself as he stopped his struggles to escape. It was pointless, and it would only waste the precious little breath he had. Think, does this thing have any weaknesses? Is there any part of it that isn't fluid? Think. He desperately searched for an answer in his mind as the sludge tried to force its way through his tightly shut lips. His eyes. The sludge villain's eyes were most definitely solid. And so, with all of his remaining strength, he punched the sludge villain in the eye. It howled in pain and loosened its grip just enough for Izuku to escape. The green boy had barely enough time to get his breath back before he started running, knowing that the villain was nowhere near defeated. But he was too slow. The villain, despite having blood stream from one of its eyes, was reaching tendrils of slime towards Izuku. "You'll pay for that, you brat!" The villain furiously roared, and Izuku panicked as the sludge got closer and closer. He kept on running, even though his lungs burned and his legs ached with pain, and all he could think was someone help, someone help, someone help. No words could describe the relief he felt when he heard 3 familiar words from a booming voice. "I am here." All Might ran at his full speed, searching across the city for the villain that had just slipped away from him. Damn it, I let my guard down. I should have known he was able to go into the sewers. Hopefully, no one gets hurt by my idiotic mistake. All Might's one remaining lung was failing to process air. He knew his time limit was less than 20 minutes away from ending. But the villain was still at large, and possibly harming an innocent life, all because of his carelessness. He had to stop the sludge villain. He was about to give up when he heard an angry scream that sounded like the sludge villain come from an underpass. He hurried over there, and saw a green-haired teenager run from the villain. The villain seemed to be bleeding in one eye, perhaps the result of the teenager trying to defend himself. But he had no time to think about that now. In his booming voice, he yelled, "I am here," and charged up one for all in his right arm. Texas smash. Izuku watched in awe as the sludge villain was blown to bits by the wind pressure from the punch. "Oh my god, I can't believe All Might saved me so mazingo, my god of Igatos Kimifican be heroided bedreamco metru digitapro valframanid his signature too." He was frozen with shock for a few moments, before he walked to All Might, shyly asking, Thank you F for saving me. See, can I have your signature? Gosh, I really need to work on my stuttering habit, it's so embarrassing." All Might smiled at the awkward teen that was holding out a notebook. He then pulled out the pen that was always in his pocket for occasions like these. He often went through 2 or 3 pens a day with the number of requests he got. Scribbling a signature on the teen's notebook quickly, he handed it back to the broccoli boy, who was staring at the signature in awe as if it were a national treasure. He couldn't help but chuckle at the nervous stutter of, "Thank you so much," and patted the teen on the back. "No need to thank me, saving people is my duty. Plus, you did a good job on getting that villain's eye. I probably wouldn't have figured out that weakness myself. If you weren't so smart, I maybe wouldn't have been quick enough to save you." Izuku turned red at the compliment, and steam came out of his ears as he was rendered speechless for a full minute. It was nothing. I just kinda, tried to think. And not that I'm saying you didn't think. I didn't mean it like that. All Might placed a hand on his shoulder and smiled. "It's okay, Shonen, I get what you mean. Don't panic." This only seemed to make Izuku more flustered, and he kept apologizing for being overreactive for 3 minutes straight. As Izuku slowly calmed down, All Might went around gathering bits of the sludge villain and putting them into a very convenient soda bottle he'd found lying around. It was confirmed that the villain was still alive, because as soon as the bits containing its mouth and eyes, it started screaming and cursing, though it became a bit quieter after All Might had stuffed all of it into the bottle and screwed on the cap. Izuku took in a deep breath and steadied himself mentally. "All right, Izuku, you can do this. Just ask him and it'll be over." All Might, "Yes, I want to ask you something." "Go ahead. See, can someone without a quirk become a hero like you? Even if I don't have a quirk, can I still save people with a smile on my face?" Izuku held his breath, and looked at the floor, waiting for the answer. For his entire life, everyone, his teachers, his classmates, even straight-up strangers, had told him no. They'd told him that a quirkless person was worthless, that he couldn't be a hero. Although some of them were too afraid to say it to his face because of Katsu, their glares said everything for them. There was no way he could do it. But Katsu was there for him. He'd supported him when no one else did, he'd protected him from bullies, he'd given him hope. Katsu was everything to him. It was all because he'd insisted Izuku learn self-defense that Izuku had made great friends like Kendo and Ojiro. It was because he brought Izuku out of his shell that he became someone Tanaka admired. Izuku and Katsu both admired All Might. Katsu admired him for his strength, his ability to win every fight. Izuku admired him for how he could save and help people with a smile on his face, no matter how dangerous the situation was. Despite for very different reasons, they idolized the number one hero. And that hero was standing in front of him right now. If he could just get a yes from his idol, it would mean the world to him. But All Might's harsh and realistic words hit him like a truck. Pro heroes are people who put their lives at risk daily. It would be a lie if I told you that a quirkless person could become a hero. Izuku bit his lip. He knew it would end up like this. He knew he shouldn't have expected something else. But some part of him just felt so disappointed. Sad. He didn't know how to describe the feeling, but it painfully tugged at his heart. I see. His voice was blank, emotionless. I can't be weak. I can't be a baby and whine over something I already knew would happen. If you admire the thought of saving others, you can become a policeman. They're ridiculed as villain deliverers, but it's a fine occupation. All Might could feel his time limit running out. He had at most 2 minutes. He started to walk away as he talked. It's not bad to dream, but you need to face reality. Izuku stood silently as All Might walked away. When the blonde disappeared from his sight, he let the tears flow, curling up into a ball as he sobbed. All Might let out a relieved sigh after he reached a small, empty alley and turned back into a skeleton with a puff of smoke. Is it smoke or steam? He was sorry he had to reject the team like that, but being a hero wasn't risk-free. Sugarcoating the matter would just make the boy overconfident and put him into danger. It was then his phone rang, and All Might fished it out of his pants pocket, checking who the caller was. Mirai. Why would he call me now? Surprised but happy that his old friend was calling him after their argument over his vision of Yagi's death, the blonde picked up the call. Toshinori. Mirai. We haven't talked for quite a while. What are you calling me for? It's about your quirk. What about it? I've found a successor for you. Really? All Might was overjoyed. Although the main reason he'd came to Musudafu was to find a successor, Gran Torino had always said his judgment skills were rather poor. Taking his colleague's advice wouldn't be a bad idea. Yes, his name is Mirio Tagata, and I've been training him for 2 years now. He'll be in year 3 when UA's next school year starts. He's in UA, yes, his quirk's permeation, which allows him to make any part of his body intangible. Although it's difficult to control and use well, he's persevered through a lot of training and is now extremely strong. He's also got a very determined and heroic heart, which makes me think he'd be a perfect successor for your quirk. Of course, you can decide after you meet him in person and observe for a while, but you have my vote of confidence in this boy. Thank you, Mirai. After hanging up, Yagi Toshinori walked out of the alleyway with a small smile on his face. Mirio. Sounds like a good hero. Eventually, Izuku's tears subsided and he stood up. It's all right. You still have Katsu. You still have your friends. It's not like your dreams got entirely crushed. He wiped away the snot and tears on his face and started to walk away. Actually, what time is it? He looked at his wristwatch, only to realize that it had been completely destroyed during the struggle with the villain. Sighing, he pulled his phone out of his backpack, which was thankfully still intact, only to freeze when he turned on his phone. He had 69 missed calls from Katsu and hundreds of frantic and worried messages from Katsu, Kendo, and Ojiro. He quickly called Katsu back, and the explosive blonde picked up practically the moment he called. You idiot. Do you have any idea how worried I was when you didn't show up to the arcade? Where the air you? Izuku winced at how loud his friend was, but was touched by how much Katsu cared. It's nothing. I had a little run-in with a villain, but I didn't get hurt. A hero arrived soon and defeated the villain. He tried his best to sound as cheerful as possible, but he couldn't really muster much energy. They were both silent for a short moment, but Katsu spoke up. Are you all right? You sound a little off. It's nothing. Don't worry. I'm just a little tired after the accident. Go home if you're tired. We can always go to arcade someday later. Katsu's stern command gave him no option to protest. Plus, nearly suffocating to death did take a lot out of him. So he cheerily replied, Okay. And made his way back home, where a soft warm bed was waiting for him. Now, some people might think Bakugo was hot-headed or that he let his emotions cloud his thoughts, but he was no idiot. And he could tell it if his best friend wasn't okay. Ever since Deku had a run-in with a villain, he'd grown a lot quieter and more reserved, and would flinch at the mention of All Might or anything about heroes altogether. Bakugo didn't like seeing his friend like that. He'd grown up with the green-haired boy, and he knew far more than anyone else how unconfident Deku used to be before he, Hands Girl and Tail Guy got him out of his shell. Seeing Deku back to being all diffident just made him feel uncomfortable. So he decided to confront him about it. Izuku was walking down the road, sipping a bit of tea when Katsu, who was next to him, asked a question out of nowhere. "What's been going on with you lately?" His tone wasn't harsh and gruff, like the usual demeanor he put on, but instead genuinely worried and concerned. What do you mean?" Bakugo gave an annoyed sigh, and said, "All of this shit you're doing. You're quieter, you stutter whenever you talk, you act like back when we were kids and you were a spineless wimp." Izuku cringed at Katsu's harsh, but true words. "I guess I really am useless. Even Katsu said so." Bakugo raised an eyebrow at Deku's words. "Who said you were useless, you idiot? You're not. You're smart, you're good at crap like quirk analysis, you trained harder than anyone else and you've become strong enough to beat our entire class with one hand tied behind your back." Tears flowed down Izuku's cheeks and he hugged Katsu. "He still believes in me. He believes in me, even if All Might doesn't. And that's all that matters." Bakugo's lips twitched upwards slightly as he watched the greenette in his embrace let his tears flow freely, slowly stroking his back and murmuring, "It's okay," to him. Eventually, his tears subsided and he let go of Bakugo. "So, do you wanna talk about it?" Izuku took in a deep breath. He didn't want to have to go through all those emotions again, but he knew it was better to just face it than run away. Well, you remember how I ran into a villain and a hero saved me?" "Yeah, something happened then. The hero who saved me was a high-ranked hero. To say that is a huge understatement, really. I asked him if I could be a hero without a quirk, and he said no." Bakugo clenched his fist in anger when Deku wordlessly nodded. "Who the said that to you?" "I'm not gonna tell you." "Why not?" Bakugo's voice was filled with disbelief. All Deku had to do was tell him who the bastard was, and the blonde would tear that piece of shit to shreds, high-ranking be damned. "Because if I tell you, you're gonna go ahead and pick a fight with that hero, and get in a lot of trouble. You'd get a permanent record and be banned from every single hero school." "So what?" Bakugo yelled. What do you mean, so what? You've always wanted to become a hero. I don't want to jeopardize your entire career over something as stupid as this. Plus, that hero was just trying to keep me safe. He didn't know how strong I was. He assumed I was a regular scrawny kid without a quirk. You can't blame him for that." "Fine, I'll drop it, okay. Sorry for being concerned about you." Bakugo grumbled, seriously ticked off. He was just trying to help. I'm sorry I lost my temper just now. I was just worried you might actually get in trouble." Izuku apologized over and over again after he realized he'd just yelled at Katsu on the spur of the moment. "It's fine. More like I was glad to see you have a little spirit again," Bakugo said, ruffling the hair of the blushing broccoli boy. "Should we go for a little bit of training?" "Sure." After a short walk, they reached the Takoba Municipal Beach Park. The beach used to be beautiful, with pristine landscape that sparkled in the sunlight. But over the years, the sea would carry various trash and debris to the sandy shore and people started to use it as a place to illegally dump their trash, rather than disposing of it properly. As the piles of junk grew, less and less people came to the beach, allowing the place to fall into further disrepair. Izuku hated how the once beautiful place was reduced to an unofficial dump. 2 months ago, he'd thought of something. If no one else is cleaning the beach, maybe I could. It would be good training to lift larger and heavier things and it would be beneficial for the community. And thus, Izuku started cleaning the beach up. In only 2 months, he'd rid half of the beach of its garbage, letting the sand underneath see the sunlight after many years. As he cleaned up the beach, People started taking notice of his actions, and day by day, more and more people would join in and clean up the beach along with Izuku. Heck, there was even a news article about how a heroic boy's solo efforts had inspired other people to change community for the better. Izuku immediately started warming up before cleaning up. He didn't want to place unnecessary strain on his muscles. His warm-up wasn't much, just a short 5-mile run and 100 sit-ups, bench squats and push-ups each. After working up a slight sweat with his warm-up, he immediately started cleaning up the beach. He started heading towards one of the areas with larger chunks of trash. On the way, he returned the greetings of people he'd got to know by cleaning up this place together on the way. With almost no effort at all, he heaved a large couch onto his left shoulder and put a fridge on his right, carrying them towards the truck whose driver was nice enough to lend to them for the beach cleaning. They'd put all the trash into the back of the truck and the driver would drive it towards the dump, where all the garbage would be disposed of. Most people would have assumed Izuku had a strength quirk, given the fact that he could quite literally carry both a couch and a fridge with ease. But he'd purely gotten the strength some might call inhuman by hard work and training, as unbelievable as it might sound. Bakugo watched as he lifted an entire car, distinct pride in his gaze. I wonder if that hero would have turned him down if they saw him right now. Tearing his gaze away from Izuku, Bakugo used his quirk to blast a large piece of concrete apart and picked up some of the resulting smaller lumps. He went over to the truck and returned Deku's bright smile with a grin of his own when they passed by each other. After a while, both of them stopped and met up at the entrance of the park. Izuku contentedly sighed. I think that's enough for today. Bakugo nodded. We've made enough progress for today. So, what you wanna do now? It's still. Bakugo quickly checked his watch. 4 o'clock. Izuku shrugged. I dunno. Maybe come over to my house. We should invite Kendo and Ojiro-kun as well. Okay. Bakugo liked hanging at Deku's house. Auntie Inko was always nice, and her cooking was great, which meant a good bit of afternoon tea was always guaranteed whenever he went there. Great, Izuku chirped. Now all I need to do is text Kendo and Ojiro-kun. Izuku turned on his phone and quickly typed out a message. Izuku. Hey guys, wanna come over to my house? Kendo. Sure, we'll be there in 15 minutes. Ojiro. Me too. Izuku. Great, see you. Izuku turned his phone off and beamed happily. Katsu. They said yes. We can all hang out at my house. Bakugo smiled. Good to hear. 15 minutes later, the four of them were at the Midoriya's apartment, sitting around the table and munching on chocolate chip cookies Inko had baked for them while chatting. So, we all wanna go to UA, right? Ojiro asked. I mean, yeah, Kendo replied him through a mouthful of cookies. Who wouldn't want to? I'm just saying. It's pretty hard to believe that the entrance exam is only 10 months away. I feel like I've waited for that moment my entire childhood, but now that I'm so close, I don't really know if I'm good enough to pass, you know. They sat in silence as they thought over it for a while. Then Kendo spoke up. I kinda get what you mean. It is scary, knowing that there won't be a second chance to get in if you fail. But if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't at least take a step forward and try, then you'll probably regret it afterwards. You miss all of the shots that you don't take. So. I think that even if you're not sure that you can do it, you should try. If you don't succeed, you can always learn from those mistakes, maybe apply for another hero school. But chickening out at the last moment because you weren't confident enough will get you nowhere. Plus, I think you're more than good enough, Ojiro. You've worked hard to get to where you are today. Don't let being nervous take that away from you. She softly smiled at Ojiro, whose eyes glistened with tears that threatened to spill out. Thank you. Don't worry, Ojiro-kun. You're great at using your quirk, and you know martial arts. There's no way UA isn't letting in someone as great as you. What Deku said. Ojiro gave a watery smile. Thanks, guys. This means a lot to me. So, anyway, continuing on the topic of UA, what you reckon the exam's gonna be like? Ojiro tried to steer the subject away. Everyone knows that there's a written exam and a practical one, obviously, seeing as it was literally in the UA website. Kendo, who was now sipping a glass of milk, replied. Yeah, duh, but what exactly do they consist of? Izuku was the one to answer. Well, obviously, the written portion is gonna consist of the regular general education stuff, like mathematics or English. But seeing as it is an exam for the hero course, there will also probably be stuff about heroes, maybe things that ask you about the priority of fighting villains and saving people, stuff to see if you have the right mindset. As for the practical bit, it'll be combat orientated to see how well we can use our quirks to handle villains, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was another part to let us demonstrate our rescue skills. It's highly unlikely that the exam will contain fighting machines, since this is a major flaw that doesn't allow people with high potential mental quirks to show their talents, and surely a prestigious school like UA wouldn't make such a huge and careless mistake. Oh, if only he knew. Izuku continued on his ramblings, barely pausing to catch his breath. There could be the chance of UA pitting us against each other and doing a 1v1 elimination fight, but that would also be flawed because of many potential unfair matchups, like maybe someone with an impressive quirk that couldn't show the judges their talents because of their opponent having a quirk that perfectly countered theirs. So, I'm not really sure what the practical portion will consist of, and we should probably just get prepared for any situation possible. Bakugo, Kendo and Ojiro all nodded, impressed by Izuku's quick but detailed analysis of the exam. Well, no matter what the exam's gonna be, we're gonna get in together and become the best heroes ever. Kendo said brightly. Yeah, the other three, Bakugo being the loudest, cheered. Waves softly lapped at the sandy shore as a green-haired boy silently watched not far away. The beach was empty except for the teen, a calming silence filling the beautiful beach where sand glowed golden in the dawning sun. The silence was broken by the crunch of feet against the sand, and an ash-blonde teen, seeming to be the same age as the greenette, made his way to where the other boy was sitting, plopping down next to him. So, today's the big day, Bakugo remarked. Excitement gleamed in his crimson eyes, not that he let it show much. The sun danced across the rippling sea as Izuku gazed at it, and he let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Yeah, it's kinda hard to believe that we're actually about to take the entrance exam, ya know. Bakugo smiled a little. All of that hard work, all of that training, it's all led up to this moment. Izuku grinned. I know. But, we can definitely do it. I mean, if we can clean up a beach full of trash in 3 months, we can handle whatever UA throws at us. I guess you're right. Bakugo chuckled a little and got up. Better get home and grab those bags. Don't wanna be late for the entrance exam, do you? Nope. Izuku got up as well and they headed to their respective homes to change and get everything ready. Uraraka Ochako was excited, to say the least. She was going to take the UA entrance exams. She could actually become a hero and earn enough money to give them a comfortable life. As she walked towards UA, she noticed 2 boys not too far away from her. One had ash-blonde spiky hair with crimson eyes, and was making small sparks in his palms. Was that his quirk? The other had fluffy dark green hair that looks like it'd nice to touch and eyes of a similar shade, with freckles on his face. They were having a conversation about the entrance exam, the green-haired one smiling constantly and the ash-blonde bursting out profanities by the second. The broccoli boy's cheerful laugh turned into a surprised yelp when he tripped on his own feet. Uraraka was about to reach out and help the boy, but the blonde caught him just fine, before muttering something sounding vaguely similar to, idiot. Seeing that the boy was fine, Uraraka headed on towards UA and the 2 boys were soon thrown aside to the back of her mind. Izuku blushed in embarrassment as Bakugo lectured him for the 1000th time on how much he was an idiot and that he should be more careful. They sat down, and moments after, lights all around started turning on, and a screen lighted up with UA's symbol, showing a man standing on the stage below. To all examinees out there, welcome to my live performance. The man shouted with way too much enthusiasm, his loud voice making many wince. He was a tall, slim man with long blonde hair, which he wore spiked upwards in a large tuft behind his head, and a small mustache. He wore a black jacket and his neck was obscured by what seemed to be a speaker of sorts, along with a pair of orang-tinted shades. Everybody, say, hey, he yelled, before turning his head so that his ear faced the crowd, clearly expecting everyone to respond. This guy is cringe, Bakugo thought as everyone in the crowd stayed silent. That's cold, the man shivered, possibly for exaggeration. To the examinees out there, I'll give you a quick rundown of the practical exam. Are you ready? Why? Silence. Meanwhile, Izuku was fanboying like the hero otaku he was. It's Present Mike, the voice hero. I listen to his radio show every week. The teachers here are all pro heroes. Bakugo cut him right off with a chop on his head. Shut up, Deku, everyone's looking at you. Sorry. Present Mike continued. As the application says, you'll participate in a 10-minute mock battle in the city. Bring anything. After this, head to your assigned practice center. Okay. Izuku and Bakugo looked at their assigned practice center on their exam tickets. A quick glance told them that they were assigned to different centers. While Izuku was assigned Center B, Bakugo had to go to Center A. So they're not letting friends work together, huh? Bakugo asked, looking at Izuku's ticket. Seems like it, Izuku replied. At each practice center, there are 3 types of virtual villains. For each of them, you earn points depending on their level. The screen showed a pixelized variant of Present Mike defeating one of the virtual villains like it was a video game. Use your individual quirk to defeat the villains and earn points. And, of course, don't hurt others or do anything unheroic. I have a question, one of the examinees shouted. Okay, Present Mike responded, pointing in the general direction of the person. A spotlight turned on above him and he pointed at a printout in his hand. In this printout, there are 4 villain types. If it's a misprint, it'll be a great shame on such a prestigious school. We examinees are here because we want to be taught by exemplary heroes. The boy had dark blue hair and eyes and wore a pair of rectangular glasses. He turned around and pointed at Izuku, and you, the messy-haired boy, your ramblings are disrupting. If you're here just for fun, leave now. Bakugo growled and tried to get up and teach Four Eyes a lesson, but Deku held him down. It's okay, he said softly to him, before turning to face the blue-haired boy. I'm sorry if my mumbling's been distracting. I've always had a bad habit of doing it, but I didn't realize it could be distracting to others. I promise I'm taking this exam seriously and that I would never intentionally disrupt any of you. The boy glared at Izuku wordlessly, not taking the apology but not wanting to make a scene either. Okay. Examinee number 7111, seriously, how does he remember all these numbers? Thanks for the question. The 4th villain is worth 0 points. It's an outcast. It's just a gimmick that's causing a ruckus throughout each center. You can destroy him, but there's no point, pun intended. To you little listeners, I advise you to avoid these guys. The blue-haired boy did a dramatic 90-degree bow. Thank you very much and please excuse my question. The spotlight illuminating his face turned off as he sat down. Izuku could overhear students conversing. I see, it's a stage gimmick you have to avoid. It's like a video game. Izuku frowned slightly at the comment, spiraling into his own thoughts. It is like a video game. You're supposed to defeat robots. What kind of crappy design is this exam? Do they even know how many amazing quirks could be great for hero work but are useless against robots? I mean, look at Midnight. Her quirk makes her perfect for subduing villains without spilling blood, but robots don't exactly get affected by sleeping gases. And all this stuff about earning points is just stupid. That's not how it works in the real world. Defeating villains sometimes makes things worse, not better. Isn't there at least a point deducting system for property damage or sabotage? To make things worse, there's absolutely no part of this about actually saving people. Being a hero isn't just beating villains up. This is stupid. That's it for now. Present Mike's voice jerked him back to reality. Finally, I'll bestow upon you our school motto. The hero Napoleon Bonaparte once said, true heroism consists of being superior to the ills of life. Go over and beyond, plus ultra. So I wish you all the best. Izuku took a deep breath. He was going to do it. He was gonna become a hero. Izuku gulped slightly, standing in front of a huge gate and even more enormous walls that encompassed Practice Center B. The examinees around him were all in awe and shock at the ginormous fake city in the walls that they could just barely see. What the hell is this? It's like a city. How many of these are there? UA's amazing. How does the school afford building so many of these fake cities? Izuku wondered aloud as he gazed at the huge city he was soon going to be fighting robots in. Suddenly, he felt a firm hand on his shoulder. Turning around to have a look, he realized it was the blue-haired boy with glasses earlier on. The boy glared at him with such an intensity that Izuku shrank back a little. You're doing that annoying muttering of yours again. Can't you see people are trying to concentrate? Are you here just to sabotage us? And no, of course not. I'm not doing this on purpose, I swear. Like I told you, it's a bad habit I've never been able to take care of. The other examinees looked on with glee as Izuku tried to explain. Isn't that the guy who tripped at the entrance? Looks like we've got one less competitor. How lucky for us to have easier pickings in our group. Meanwhile, the blue-haired boy continued berating Izuku for his mumbling. You should have been aware of how distracting your ramblings were and improved. Start. Present Mike's yell cut off the boy, and the moment the gate opened, Izuku shot off like a bullet while everyone else stood there trying to process what just happened. What's wrong? Life doesn't have countdowns. Everyone immediately ran into the practice center, and started to look for robots to destroy, only to discover absolutely trashed robots everywhere they looked. They all thought one thing in unison. Who the heck is this guy? Izuku's mind was sharp and focused on one thing and one thing only, getting as many points as possible. He jumped from one rooftop to another as he scouted for more robots, and soon a few of them entered his sight. He jumped down from the roof and landed a kick on one of the one-pointer, crushing its head and sending it crashing into another one-pointer, which was flattened. He punched another and made a hole in its main body, before quickly dodging an attack from a two-pointer and delivering a blow that obliterated it. He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. After destroying quite a bit of robots, he noticed multiple people running away from a wide street, suggesting some kind of danger over there. There was no hint of smoke in the air, so it was most likely none of the robots over there had been destroyed yet. Two examinees, both of them covered with scrapes and cuts, waved towards him, gesturing in the other direction, waving their hand in an X signal. Don't go this way. Don't go this way. There's way too many of them, all high-leveled. We can't even get close to them, it's no use. Izuku ran towards them, ignoring their warnings. How many of them are there? It doesn't matter, idiot. You're not gonna be able to get them. Only people with strong quirks are gonna stand a chance there. Just go. Don't waste your time. It's hard enough to even just escape once you're in. He looked ahead, and a second was all he needed to make his decision. That was a clear hazard. If people approached the robots like the two in front of him had, they might get seriously injured. He couldn't let that happen, not when he had the ability to clear it out. In addition, as a side benefit, he needed points, and if there were many of them like the two had said, going in would solve that problem. He stood with clear resolution in his gaze. Well, do what you want, no skin off my back. One less person to deal with, one of the boys muttered, and they took off, leaving Izuku behind to charge into the fray by himself. Taking a deep breath, he picked up speed and turned the corner, taking a glimpse at the robots. Eyes narrowing, he took in the count. They weren't lying. That is a lot. It could best be described as a scene taken straight out of a sci-fi movie. Skimming over the bunch, he estimated about 12, maybe 15 robots, all of them 2 to 3 pointers. Their red eyes swiveled back and forth, searching for fresh prey to hunt, then locking onto Izuku, who was running towards them. His legs tensed, eyes focused on the robots whose lasers and missiles he knew were coming. He didn't know exactly what they could do, but he wasn't keen on testing that out anytime soon. Relying solely on his senses and peripheral vision to read and avoid attacks, he advanced as far as he could until he saw a laser beam come at him from the front. He tensed his muscles and readied himself. Breathe in, breathe out, Haya HHHHH. He kicked off the ground, spinning to left to avoid the laser. He felt it brush by his head as he twirled, with the impact crashing into the road behind him, sending debris flying everywhere with a hefty explosion. Keeping his momentum going, he pushed forward, zoning in completely on the projectiles sent at him. Time seemed to slow around as he dodged them one after the other, but he couldn't help but wince slightly when a laser split open the skin on his cheek. It wasn't a matter of them being fast, he could handle them. The issue was the sheer quantity that made them hard to keep track of. They were coming at him from all sides, and as he dodged one attack, he ran right into the path of another, and the cycle continued. The closer he got, the more he was hampered. Yet, he was getting close enough to strike. He could feel another spike of pain as another laser scraped his leg, but he ignored it. He dodged a beam coming from above, then from the right, then the left. The robots had him nearly surrounded because of their numbers, but all he needed to do was take down one, and the formation would start to collapse. His knees were bent, preparing to jump. He clenched his fists tightly as his heart pounded. With a deep inhale, he directed all of his energy to his legs, and jumped as a synchronous blast fired from all the robots. The beams converged as the ground was blasted apart beneath him, right where he stood a moment before. Soaring above the robots, he finally had enough space to launch an attack. He landed a mid-air roundhouse kick that created so much air pressure 5 robots fell. He was still flipping through the air as he passed another robot. It couldn't react fast enough to detect him after its latest shot, given that he took to the air and was above them all. Landing on the ground with the grace of a gymnast, he leapt right back up, and used the enemy's own metallic body as ledges to kick off. He danced, in between, in front of, from behind. His fists were a never-ending blur, striking out to everything it could reach. Heads, arms, legs, metal crashed down to the ground, one after the other. They weren't built to register movements as quick as his, so all they could do was stand around, trying to locate their assassin, while said assassin took them down, quick as lightning. By the time the remaining 2 or 3 managed to locate him, the instrument of destruction played its tune. He fought until there was nothing left standing. His body moved on its own, his fist swinging in stances too familiar to even require thought. The robots never even so much as stood a chance. Phew. Well, that's 54 points by now. It's probably not enough to pass, though. Better keep looking. Those intense, predatorial emerald eyes softened into their usual warmth, that kind gaze so soft it seemed hard to believe that such an innocent-looking boy was capable of so much destruction. After all, appearances can be deceiving. He wiped a stray drop of blood off his cheek, and after a quick climb, he was back on the rooftops, looking around for more potential points. After a while of only seeing already defeated robots, he found someone surrounded by 3 or 4 robots and about to be crushed by one. Without thinking, he jumped in immediately, and with a couple kicks and punches, he'd gotten himself another 8 points, bringing the total up to 62. After making sure the robots were completely dealt with, he stuck a hand out to the girl he just saved, and asked, "Are you okay?" Uraraka put her 5 fingers on a robot rushing towards her and sent it high into the sky, then released it, completely pulverizing it with its descent towards the ground. She let out a soft moan as she felt a wave of nausea attack her, but she forced the rising bile back down her throat. She needed to get more points than just this if she wanted to get into UA and become a hero for mom and dad. Her tired body screamed in protest as she took another wobbly step forwards. Her exhausted mind barely registered it when a horde of robots started closing in around her, and when she tried to run, her legs felt as heavy as lead and she barely made it more than a few steps before she fell over. Terror overcame her as she watched a robot lift its giant leg, about to trample her. "Move, move, goddammit," she screamed at her body, but she couldn't so much as budge. "Somebody, anybody, help." The words seemed stuck in her throat as she desperately tried to shout for help. Then suddenly out of nowhere, a boy jumped into the horde of robots, effortlessly beating up the robots with movement so fast he seemed like a blur. Within a matter of seconds, the robots had been vanquished. The boy leapt down from the carcass of a robot, and stuck his hand out to her, asking, "Are you okay?" The boy had fluffy green hair and eyes a similar shade, and had bleeding cuts on both his cheek and leg. "It's the boy who tripped at the entrance," Uraraka realized. Who would have thought that he would be this strong? "I'm fine, thanks for asking," Uraraka took the boy's extended hand and got up with his help. Just a little nauseous from overusing my quirk, that's all. Okay, the boy replied cheerfully. Wish you good luck on the exam then. He then climbed up the side of a building like it was nothing at all and started running across rooftops, leaving Uraraka standing there in shock with only one thought. What just happened? Meanwhile, pro heroes stood in a viewing room, watching as the examinees gained points using different methods. In this practical exam, the number and location of the foe villains are undisclosed. The short time limit and large field helped to draw out the ability to quickly gather information. The screen showed a white-haired boy pointing his webbed 6 arms in different directions. The mobility to respond to different situations. A blue-haired boy with glasses ran at great speeds with flames spurting out of his engine-like legs. The discernment to stay calm under any circumstance. A yellow-haired boy with purple eyes blasted a robot with a laser from his stomach, then turned his head and winked at the camera. Heaven knows how he keeps breaking the fourth wall. And pure combat ability. An ash-blonde boy with crimson eyes grinned maniacally with smoking piles of defeated robots around him. These basic qualities needed for the city's peace are measured by this point system. This year's group looks promising. Nezu commented as he sipped a cup of tea. You can say that again. Toshinori agreed as he looked at the screen showing a green-haired boy punching through robots with ease. Nezu, can you pull up the files on that young man with green hair over there? Of course, Nezu replied, rummaging through a thick stack of papers. Let me see. Ah, here it is. Midoriya Izuku, Quirkless. A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. Are you sure he's quirkless? Ectoplasm asked, pointing at Izuku, who was literally punching through the steel armor of the robots with his bare hands. Because if that right there isn't a quirk, I don't know what is. There were quite a number of nods and mutters of agreement from the teachers and staff of UA. Toshinori was in shock too. He remembered clearly the nervous stuttering boy from 10 months ago. Can someone without a quirk become a hero like you? Back then, he'd assumed the boy was just another hopeful dreamer and underestimated him for his quirk status. If he'd known the boy was this strong, he wouldn't have rejected him. Maybe he could have been a good successor of One for All. Toshinori firmly pushed away the small voice at the back of his mind. He made his decision. Young Tagata was a good successor, and he would never regret choosing him. Well, it doesn't matter whether he's quirkless or not, as long as he makes a good hero. I personally think he'll make a good one, Toshinori piped up. It's too early to decide. Someone retorted, and the transparent cover of a red button labeled the Yuruki switch slowly lifted up. They're real qualities. A finger pushed down the button. Will be put to a test now. Izuku looked for more robots to destroy. He'd managed to rack up a good 71 points, but he could still get more points just to be on the safe side. But he was promptly thrown off the roof he was on as the ground shook violently. Not far away, a ginormous cloud of dust and smoke came out of nowhere. A few blocks away, examinees stared in shock at the monstrosity slowly making its way towards them. Izuku's worry grew even more as screams of shock and fear came from the general direction of where the dust cloud was. He could see hordes of students running, trampling over each other in their panic. The shaking of the ground became more and more violent as an ominous rumble sounded, making Izuku certain that something big was coming. I have to go help. Izuku rushed off, and it didn't take him long to figure out what the cause of all the commotion was. A colossal robot, easily topping any other robot he'd seen before, towered over a bunch of terrified examinees, all trying to run away from it. Izuku thought back to present Mike's explanation of the practical exam. The fourth foe villain is worth 0 points. It's just a gimmick that's causing a ruckus throughout each center. I advise you avoid these guys. Well, I can see why you'd want to avoid this guy. Izuku thought as he stared at the gigantic robot in front of him. It's ridiculously huge. The 0-pointer delivered a punch to the ground, sending debris everywhere and creating an air current so strong Izuku had to put in effort to stop himself from toppling over. Humans show their true colors when they face an overwhelming threat. Izuku was about to turn away and look for easier pickings too when he heard a weak voice cry out. Ouch! Looking in the direction of the voice, Izuku froze. A girl with brown hair was stuck under the rubble caused by the zero-pointer's punch earlier. Isn't that the girl I saved earlier? The robot was slowly but surely going forwards. She'll get crushed. Inside the viewing room, the UA staff was getting frantic. Power loader, don't you have an emergency stop button for these things? Toshinori asked, looking at the girl who was ever increasingly closer to getting flattened. I do, but it's malfunctioning. The man was frantically taking apart the control panel and rewiring it, but he was never going to be able to sort through the tangled mess of wires in time to save the girl. Izuku bit his lip. He knew he could get more points if he just went off, and the school would probably stop the robot in time. But what if it doesn't stop? Izuku looked at the girl trying to pull herself out of the rubble but failing to do so, and the robot that seemed to have no intention of stopping, and let out a sigh. Oh, goddammit! He bent his knees, his back coiled like a spring, and rushed forwards in a wild burst of speed. He lifted the chunks of concrete off the girl's legs, and put her down in an alleyway where she was slightly safer, then rushed back onto the road. The zero-pointer's 8 red eyes locked onto him, and it sent its fist flying towards him. Izuku leapt onto its fist, and ran along it all the way up to its shoulder, where he pulled back his fist and swung as hard as he could into the zero-pointer's head. The green hunk of metal dented, and as those red eyes flickered out to a lifeless gray, explosions started setting off on his head. Sensing the danger, Izuku jumped off, and landed on the ground unscathed, just in time to avoid the massive chain reaction of explosions that sent the titanic robot toppling backwards. One more minute. Izuku started heading towards the alley where the girl was, but a wave of excruciating pain brought him to a dead stop. A quick look at his right hand told him the skin was scraped off of his currently raw and bleeding knuckles, and at least 3 of his fingers were broken. He groaned in pain when he tried to move his fingers. Correction, all of the fingers on his right hand were broken. Gotta remember, just because I have strength that's slightly above average doesn't mean I'm invincible. Holding his hand gingerly, he stumbled over to the alleyway, where the girl had managed to sit up by now and didn't seem to have too many physical injuries except for her ankle. Thank goodness you're all right, Izuku let out a sigh of relief. The girl was startled by Izuku, and turned around. Oh, it's you. Thank you so much for saving me twice, she exclaimed. Don't mention it, Izuku replied, scratching his head with his unbroken hand. Oh, is your hand okay? The girl asked, worried. It's fine, don't worry. It'll heal in no time. Izuku tried to reassure her. Hopefully you're right. I'm sorry you got hurt while saving me, Uraraka said, the expression on her face slightly guilty. And no, it's fine. That's what being a hero is about, after all. Izuku frantically tried to comfort her. The exam is over. Meanwhile, a crowd of people gathered where the destroyed zero-pointer was, discussing among themselves. That guy is strong. How does he have a quirk like that and be so jumpy and nervous? Maybe it was an act to trick us. I don't see any benefits from doing that though. As the examinees began debating over the mysterious kid that obliterated the zero-pointer, a boy with blue hair and glasses stood there silently. That's not it. Didn't you see? That guy jumped forward to save that girl. He risked his time, his safety and points needed to win. Even so, he showed no hesitation. The boy clenched his fists. If this weren't a test, I would have done the same, of course. He grit his teeth at the thought of not saving someone in real life. Wait, a test, of course. Hold on. An old, sweet voice interrupted his train of thoughts. Good job, everyone. Good job, good job. An old lady about half the height of the boy walked towards the crowd of examinees. She wore her gray hair in a bun and had a white doctor's robe on, and the most peculiar thing she had was the syringe-shaped cane in her hand. Here, eat some gummies. The old lady put gummies into a confused examinee's hand, who said, thanks. Here's some for you, thanks. It was evident the examinees were quite bewildered, but then a yellow-haired boy with purple eyes said, that mademoiselle is the backbone of UA. The old lady reached the alleyway where Izuku was slowly helping the girl walk. Oh, dear, are you hurt? Izuku had the same befuddled reaction, but he quickly managed to piece together an answer. Why yes, I've got some minor hand injuries, and this girl over here hurt her ankle. You're Recovery Girl San, right? Thank you for healing us. Recovery Girl smiled. It's not often I get recognized. No need to thank me, kiddo. I'm just doing my job. There was a very huge gasp from the examinees when Recovery Girl planted on Izuku's cheek. What the? The yellow-haired boy continued his introduction of Recovery Girl. She's UA's school nurse, the youthful heroine, Recovery Girl. Izuku's broken and mangled fingers glowed green and started healing. Her quirk is a healing factor. The main reason UA can conduct such dangerous tests is because of her. The green glow faded and Izuku's hand was fully healed. His eyes were starry with admiration. That's so cool. But sudden fatigue overcame him, and his eyelids felt heavier than lead. That's right, Recovery Girl's quirk drains the patient's energy. With a quick smooch, Uraraka's ankle was fixed too. Okay, is anyone else hurt? The blue-haired boy had a sudden realization hit him. I see. If this test is set up like that, then Izuku stared at the fish in front of him that was his dinner, lost in his thoughts. It's been a week since the exams, and the results haven't come in yet. What if I failed the exam? Calm down, Izuku. Katsu, Kendo-san and Ojiro-kun also don't have their acceptance letters. They have such amazing quirks, there's no way they'll fail. Plus, it probably takes a lot of time to sort out the exam results and send it to each examinee. So, just because I don't have the acceptance letter doesn't mean I failed. But what if, Izuku? His mother's worried voice cut off his train of thought and he jumped, startled. Are you all right? You've been acting a little odd ever since the entrance exam. Inko's eyes were round with worry. You've been smiling at that fish for the past 5 minutes. Sorry, it's nothing, really. Izuku stuttered and began wolfing down a bowl of rice. Your results are coming in soon, right? Inko asked. Yeah, I'm proud of you just for trying out for UA. Yeah, it'll be fine, Izuku. Just look at how strong you are. You can't guarantee that everything's gonna be alright. Izuku wanted to retort, but he kept his mouth shut, silently watching his mother walk out of the house, leaving nothing but quietness. But it didn't take 3 minutes for her to burst back in, a letter in her hand. Izuku, it's here. His eyes widened in shock when he saw the sign of UA on the wax seal. It came. Late at night, Izuku held the letter, his curiosity spiking at the bulky, lumpy shape of whatever was inside the envelope. That doesn't feel like a letter. A notification sound came from his phone, and he turned it on to check. Bakugo. You guys got it too. Kendo. Yeah, Ojiro. Let's all meet up at Takoba Beach tomorrow and open the letters together. Izuku. Sure. Kendo. 10:30. Bakugo. Sounds fine to me. Izuku. Me too. Ojiro. Me 3. Putting down his phone, Izuku lay down on his bed and set an alarm for 10 in the morning before falling into a deep, peaceful sleep. Rubbing exhaustion from his eyes, Izuku made his way towards the beach with the envelope in his hand. By the time he was there, the other 3 were already there. Hey, guys, sorry for being a little late, he said as he waved his hand. It's fine, you were only 2 minutes late anyways. Kendo smiled as Izuku sat down next to them on the sand. So, who's gonna open their letter first? Deku, obviously. Bakugo grunted, surprising Izuku. Why? He stammered. Why me? Kendo smiled and ruffled Izuku's fluffy green hair. Because you've tried harder than any of us to get here. Ever since you were declared as Quirkless, your starting line was placed far behind ours. But you've overcome all that and put in so much effort. For that, you deserve to know before any of us how much your efforts paid off. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he wiped them away. Thank you. He took a deep breath and opened his letter. A round, metal disc fell out onto the sand. The disc glowed blue and projected a hologram of All Might. To say Izuku was displeased at seeing the man who literally crushed his dreams would be an understatement. I am on screen now. Izuku mentally facepalmed at the way All Might introduced himself. As obnoxiously loud as ever. Wait, why is All Might in a video from UA? In case you're wondering why I'm in this video, I'll be working at UA. Wait, what? A simultaneous yell came from all four of them. Someone off-screen tapped All Might on the shoulder and he leaned over. "What is it? Wrap it up. There are things I need to tell him. I'm pushing the schedule." "Okay. I got it." He turned back to face Izuku. "You performed almost perfectly on the written portion of the exam, getting 97 points. As for the practical exam, you earned 72 villain points, which was more than enough to pass." Izuku couldn't believe his ears. Katsu gave him a pat on his back. "See, told ya you could do it." But that's not all. The entrance exam wasn't only graded based on villain points. Rescue points are given by the examiners. Izuku Midoriya won 60 rescue points. "Young Midoriya, welcome to your hero academia. Let's go." Kendo, Ojiro and Katsu wrapped him in a bone-crushing hug. After a lot of struggling, Izuku managed to get the three off him, but by the time they let go, he couldn't feel his arms. Then, they watched the rest of the holograms, and, needless to say, they had all passed. A ranking list of the points they had received was shown. Izuku had effortlessly placed first with 72 villain points and 60 rescue points, while Katsu was second with 77 villain points and 0 rescue points. He insisted he would have helped others if this wasn't an exam. Kendo placed fifth with 25 villain points and 40 rescue points. Ojiro had gotten 31 villain points and 10 rescue points, but didn't manage to get in the top 10. The three of them spent a comforting him and reassuring him that he did well and to look on the brighter side that he had passed. They then took a look at the letter that accompanied the hologram. Within was a list of miscellaneous things, e.g. what class they were in, where to buy the school uniform, etc. "I'm in Class 1A, Ojiro said. "What about you guys?" "I'm in Class A2. Izuku replied cheerily. "Me too," Katsu grunted. They then all looked at Kendo, who said, "Sorry, guys, looks like I'm in 1B. "It's okay," Izuku said, "we can still meet up at lunchtime and recess." "I guess so," Kendo answered. A notification sound awkwardly interrupted them, and Kendo took out her phone. Curious, Izuku, Katsu and Ojiro took a look. "Nito. Hey, Itsuka, I got in. I'm in Class 1B. What about you?" Kendo. "Me too, Nito. Great. Wanna meet up tomorrow?" Kendo. "Sure. Same time, same place." Nito. "Yep." After Kendo closed her phone, she realized the three boys had been looking and had identical grins on their faces. Kendo. "Who's this male friend you have that's on a first-name basis with?" Ojiro teased. Kendo's face lit up with a luminescent blush. "It's not like that. Nito is just my friend. Apparently the only friend you call by their first name, huh?" Bakugo was also making fun of her, to her surprise. Were just childhood friends, that's all. "If you say so." Midoriya was a little nicer about it, to her relief. She didn't miss the ever-so-slight teasing tone in his voice, though. Nevertheless, their high school life was going to begin soon. "I'm pleased to announce both Midoriya and Bakugo will be attending UA. It's brought honor to our school," the teacher announced in front of everyone in the classroom, making the curious and envious eyes all cast upon the two, where the first looked like he very much wanted to shrink away and curl up in a corner, but, despite his body quite obviously trembling from pressure, managed to sit straight. The latter, meanwhile, had his legs on the desk and his nose up in the air, a cocky grin on his face. "See, I told you losers Deku and I could get in. Ready to admit we're the best yet," he boasted, his crimson eyes filled with arrogance. "Katsu, stop. How many times have I told you? Other people aren't inferior to us. You have to learn that," the green-haired boy reprimanded, sighing a little. "Tch, whatever," Bakugo replied, leaning back on his seat. Izuku's attention, however, was dragged away by the note that Tsubasa, the boy sitting next to him, had slipped into his desk drawer. "Let's talk after school," it read. Knowing how much of a bully Tsubasa was, he was surely up to no good. A green-haired boy, looking about 5, whimpered when he was knocked to the ground. Laughing, a chubby, winged boy landed another blow on him. "You can't do anything without Bakugo, can you? You useless, quirkless freak." He kept throwing punch after punch, and all the green-haired boy could do was try to block the attacks. "Hey, What the hell are you doing? A blond boy with crimson eyes yelled, running towards them. Shit, Bakugo's here. The winged boy, Tsubasa, ran off in a seiko. Izuku shook his head, jerking himself away from the flashback. The past was behind him. He was different now. He was stronger, more than strong enough to take care of Tsubasa. The bell rang, and people started leaving the classroom. Bakugo slung his bag over his shoulder and looked at Izuku expectantly. Shaking his head, Izuku said, "I've got other stuff to do today, sorry." Bakugo looked disappointed, but shrugged and left. Soon, only Tsubasa and Izuku were left in the classroom. Tsubasa walked up to him, a fierce glare on his face. "How the hell did a quirkless freak like you get in UA? You're supposed to be useless. A wimp. You must have cheated to pass that exam. How many of those teachers did you bribe?" he yelled, slamming Izuku into a wall. "Why the hell do people want to hurt you so much?" Bakugo delivered another punch to the wall, frustrated and angry after a gang of middle schoolers had mobbed Izuku, who was only 7. "All of the people who attacked me were taught that quirkless people are useless. This version of reality has become set in their mind. And because I'm quirkless but training and becoming stronger, I'm proving their mindset wrong. And they don't want to admit they're wrong. They think it's my fault that things aren't the way they're supposed to be, and they become angry. They blame it on me, and them hurting me is just them trying to convince themselves I'm weak, that they weren't wrong. In a way, their bullying is just trying to set things right." Izuku replied, his voice calm and steady. Tsubasa breathed heavily, a vein pulsing in his neck with fury. He blindly threw a punch in his anger, but Izuku caught it with ease, his other hand tightly clenched into a fist. Izuku wanted to punch Tsubasa badly, and prove to him that he'd passed using his own strength. But violence wasn't the answer to everything. He prized Tsubasa's finger away from the collar of his Gakurin, and, with a low, serious voice, said, "I got into UA using my own strength. I worked hard. I fought tooth and nail to get here, and I won't let you undermine that just because I'm quirkless. But you don't have a quirk. Everybody says that quirkless people amount to nothing. The teachers, the principal, even my parents. There's no way they were wrong. You aren't supposed to be strong. You're the problem. Why can't you just admit you're a weakling and give up on your dream before some low-level villain kills you because you didn't learn your place?" Tsubasa screamed, digging his fingers into Izuku's shoulders. He paused his rant when he saw Izuku's green eyes sharp and pointed straight at him. "Listen, Tsubasa, I know that everyone's been telling you how worthless I am from the very start, and that it's all been drilled into your mind. I can't blame you for what you're doing right now. The system of society failed you as much as it failed me. What the hell are you talking about? Don't pretend you haven't noticed the teachers turning a blind eye to blatantly obvious bullying before. That was because those guys were doing the right thing by teaching you how much of a nobody you were. By not disciplining you when you did the wrong thing, they were mistreating you, though not as much as they mistreated me. Shut up. All this time, I've been looked down on, bullied and neglected. That's why I want to become a hero. To prove that it is possible. That anyone can be a hero if they are willing to put the effort in. No matter their quirk or lack of one. Because a hero isn't just raw power. Being a hero takes hard work, but it's possible if one has the determination and conviction to put forth the effort. Which I do, and I will become a hero no matter what." Leaving Tsubasa in a shocked silence, he grabbed his bag and left the classroom. Izuku fiddled with his tie nervously, checking himself out in the mirror. He had to leave a good first impression today at UA with his classmates. After making sure everything was all right, he started putting on his shoes while his mother fretted anxiously. "Izuku, do you have your tissues?" "Yeah, and your handkerchief?" "I have them," Izuku replied, slightly irked. He took a quick look at the clock and panicked. "I really have to hurry." He slung his school bag over his shoulder and opened the door. "Izuku, what now?" His mom smiled softly, eyes glistening with slight tears. "You look awesome." Izuku blushed a little, then hurriedly left with a quick, "Bye," rushing off towards UA. As he made his way down the road, he bumped into someone. "Ah, I'm so sorry." He quickly apologized, then headed on, only to realize the person he'd bumped into was going the same way as him, and was wearing a UA uniform. He goes to UA too. Is he in the hero course? Trying to socialize, Izuku awkwardly tried to strike up a conversation. Hi, I'm Izuku Midoriya. You're in UA too, right? Which course are you in? Ah, I forgot to ask for your name. I'm so sorry for being impolite. Izuku started panicking. This is the opposite of a good first impression. The person rubbed the back of his neck, messing up his indigo hair slightly. It's fine. I'm Hitoshi Shinso, General Department. The two of them reached the bus stop, where they continued chatting. So, Shinso-kun, did you try going for the hero course? Why ask? Hitoshi replied, slightly defensive, as he boarded the bus and sat down next to Midoriya. Well, most people come to UA for the hero course, and not just general education. Hitoshi avoided Midoriya's gaze, his purple eyes turning towards the window. I tried out for the hero course, but I failed the practical portion of the exam. I'd applied for the general department as backup, and I got in. Izuku paused a little at that. He couldn't even imagine how devastating it must have been for Shinso to learn he'd failed. The mere thought of failing to get in the hero course terrified him. Mind if I ask you what your quirk is? Hitoshi's shoulders tensed, an almost unnoticeable movement. You, a hero. Who ever heard of a hero brainwashing people? Your quirk. It's not very hero-like, you know. It would suit a villain best, actually. My quirk's brainwashing. If someone verbally responds to what I say, they're forced to obey my command. It only activates if I want it to. He took in a deep breath, preparing for the onslaught of insults and ridicule that was sure to come. After a silent moment that felt like a century, Midoriya spoke up. That's really cool. He looked up in disbelief. The awe on Midoriya's face was genuine, and not a hint of disgust or horror could be found. I mean, it makes sense that you couldn't pass the practical exam, since brainwashing doesn't work on robots, and that's mainly UA's fault, since using robots to measure the abilities of examinees is extremely biased against quirks that only have effect on humans. Your quirk is amazing. Just think of the possibilities you could use it in hero work. Hostage situations would be broken up with zero collateral damage. You could incapacitate villains without spilling blood. Your quirk paired with a voice changer would be just super overpowered. Izuku paused his rambling for a second to catch his breath while Shinso stared at him with wide eyes. Never before had anyone told him that his quirk was useful, that he could be a hero. Shinso-kun, what's wrong? My quirk's a villain's quirk, Midoriya. It's a perfect quirk for a villain. That's what everyone told me growing up. I wanted to get into the hero course to prove them wrong. But there's no such thing as a villainous quirk, Shinso-kun. Izuku exclaimed, his hands gesturing animatedly. Have you ever used your quirk on others? To hurt or take advantage of them? Well, no. Did you ever want to use your quirk like that? Or plan to in the future? Izuku persisted. Of course not. Shinso tried to retort, only to be interrupted again. Then your quirk isn't villainous, Shinso-kun, Izuku declared, staring firmly into the other's purple eyes. The quirk doesn't define the person. Every quirk has the potential to be heroic or villainous depending on how a person uses it. You say you never have or even wanted to use your quirk in a villainous way. Therefore, your quirk isn't villainous because you don't want to be a villain. Simple as that. But, Shinso was immediately cut off again. Simple as that. Izuku punctuated each word by poking the other boy in the chest. It doesn't matter what your quirk is, Shinso-kun. If you, in your heart, want to be a hero and use your quirk for good, then your quirk will never be villainous. The two of them jumped when they heard a laugh behind them. Nice speech, Deku. A familiar ash-blonde-haired boy was lounging on his seat behind them, grinning maniacally. Midoriya squawked and asked, how long have you been behind us? Why didn't you tell me? Hitoshi watched the two of them chat, awkwardly unable to join in the conversation. Who is this guy? Does Midoriya know him? Oh, yeah, this is Hitoshi Shinso, I just met him. He's really nice. Midoriya beamed at him, forcing him to shield his eyes. Too bright. Bakugo Katsuki. The Oz blonde grunted. Midoriya didn't seem to mind the short reply, saying, Katsu's really shy, so he seems a little rude at first, but he's a great friend once you get to know him. Okay. The bus reached the stop for UA, and the three of them got off, entering the school. Soon, they got to 1C's classroom, where Hitoshi stopped. This is my class, so, see you later. Okay, Midoriya chirped. Before he went into the classroom, he exchanged phone numbers with the broccoli boy, then turned towards the door. Suddenly, he paused in realization. Wait, we're at 1C already, so that means you two are in either 1A or 1B. That means you're in the hero course. No shit, Sherlock. Bakugo sassed. Midoriya, yeah. What's your quirk? I'm Quirkless. Hitoshi widened his eyes at Midoriya's cheery reply. He's Quirkless, but he's in the hero course. How? Oh, by the way, Shinso-kun, I heard that you can transfer to the hero course if you do well enough in the sports festival. So, don't give up just yet. Midoriya's voice slowly faded as he was dragged down the hallway by Bakugo, who had grown tired of their chit-chat. Hitoshi stood there blinking for a few seconds, before he opened the door and walked into his classroom. Thanks, Midoriya. Izuku and Katsu made their way to 1A, where Izuku stared in awe at the huge door. It was about 4 times as tall as him. I guess they have to accommodate for mutant quirked people. Out of nowhere, he suddenly remembered the blue-haired boy with glasses who had reprimanded him for mumbling in the entrance exam. I hope I don't have to share a class with him. Bakugo slammed open the door and stormed in, plopping onto his assigned chair after taking a look at the seating chart. He put his feet up on the desk, and immediately, a blue-haired boy with glasses rushed over. Speak of the devil, get your feet off the table right this instant, he criticized. Ha, Bakugo drawled. You're disrespecting the school property. Did your old school shove that stick up your ass, or were you born with it? Izuku's sweat dropped a little, standing awkwardly there while the two of them bickered. The glasses boy paused for a moment, frowning, then forced himself to calm down and extended a hand out to Katsu. It seems we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. Let's start over. I'm Tenya Iida from the Some Private Academy. And you are? Some. Huh. Katsu's face split with what could only be described as a feral grin. That means you think you're an elite. You think you're better than me, huh? Well, I'm gonna enjoy destroying you. Iida recoiled a half-pace and gasped, you would threaten your own classmate. Are you sure you're here to be a hero? Katsu scoffed, and looked as though he was about to respond with something incredibly rude. That's when Izuku decided to step in. Enough. Bakugo was surprised by Deku's stern voice. Iida-kun, I apologize on behalf of my friend. He's got a bit of a superiority complex, so don't take what he says to heart. Oh, of course, it's all right. And, Katsu, get your feet off the desk. It's unhygienic. Bakugo was very unwilling, but he didn't want to piss off Deku. He knew how scary Deku could be when he got mad. Fine. He grumbled, putting his feet down. Izuku let out a slight breath. Well, that conflict's over for now. He blinked slightly when Iida walked over to him. What does he want this time? Good morning. I'm Iida Tenya from Some Private. I know, I heard you guys. I'm Midoriya, Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you, Iida-kun. Midoriya-kun, you saw the true meaning behind the exam, how it was testing to see if we had heroic virtue, didn't you? He hadn't known about the rescue points. He'd simply helped people because he saw them in trouble. I didn't notice. I misjudged you. It's hard to admit, but you were one step ahead. Sorry, I didn't notice it either. That fluffy green hair, it's you. Who? Izuku turned around and found a girl with warm auburn hair. Isn't that the girl I saved twice at the entrance exam? Her uniform is so cute. He quickly shook his head to get rid of the bad thoughts, his face furiously red. No, bad, Izuku. That punch was amazing. The way you went bam. And the robot was obliterated. The girl continued talking to Izuku, seemingly unaware of his shyness. Bakugo watched them with a smirk, as did Ojiro. You'd have thought he'd get used to girls after all this time. Is it just opening ceremony and orientation today? I'm curious about our teacher. She's so close. If you're just here to play, go somewhere else. The entire classroom went quiet at that, staring at the 6-foot-long yellow caterpillar with a man's head lying on the ground, staring up at the students in the doorway with bleary, uninterested eyes. Wait, is that our teacher? Izuku really hoped their teacher wasn't going to be him. There was the sound of a zipper coming undone, and a thin man dressed in black with a gray scarf emerged from the yellow sleeping bag he had apparently been getting around in. He transferred his disinterested gaze to the rest of the class as he mumbled, "Hello, I'm Shota Aizawa. I'm your teacher." His black hair was long enough to fall to his shoulders, almost covering his bloodshot eyes and thin face with a week's worth of stubble on it. This guy, seriously, Izuku thought with polite disbelief. He looks like he sleeps 1 hour per day and lives purely off coffee. Not sure how he got hired by the nation's top hero school, but I suppose we'll all get an idea about that before long. Your reaction time is insufficient, Aizawa continued as he reached into his sleeping bag without blinking. It took you all 8 seconds to shut up when I first got here. That won't do. His hand emerged, holding a stack of blue and white shirts. Put on these and come outside. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.